All right, guys, welcome to our viewers. Thanks so much for joining us for our webinar today, Curing the Threat of Ransomware with Veeam and Cloudian. Joining us today are Adam Berg, Healthcare Architect at Veeam, Jonathan Foote, Healthcare Director at Veeam, and Amit Raywali, Solutions Director at Cloudian.
Hi, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Butz. I am Healthcare Director at Veeam Software. And today, obviously, we're going to talk about ransomware and our wonderful partnership with Cloudian, who brings some very unique functionality to your data center to help mitigate the risk of ransomware. So we're going to talk about ransomware in general and how it impacts healthcare organizations. We're going to talk about our joint solution and how it's an essential element of a ransomware risk mitigation strategy, and how that partnership between Veeam and Cloudian can give you faster data recovery and help you reduce the cost, the total cost of data protection for your hospital data center. A little bit about Veeam and healthcare to start. You know, Veeam has a wonderful track record in history serving healthcare. We have more than 20,000 healthcare customers around the world, and we protect more than 250,000 clinical applications globally in the healthcare space. And we've done that by building a solution portfolio that maps extraordinarily well to the needs of hospitals and healthcare systems. You know, as we've seen the rise of digital transformation in healthcare and increased dependence on clinical applications for both clinicians and patients, we offer complete protection wherever those applications run and wherever that data resides, both on and off premises. We've seen higher operational costs as a result from our transition from fee-for-service to fee-for-outcomes, which has led hospitals and health systems to look for lower cost solutions in all aspects of the data center, data protection included. And of course, with that increased reliance on information systems and the underlying data, we need better reporting, disaster recovery planning, and disaster recovery testing capabilities to assure that we can satisfy the needs of our organizations and leave them confident that we're prepared to respond appropriately and quickly to any and all unplanned events. Veeam is a large global company. We've been doing backup for a very long time. We're the largest single backup company in the world with more than $1 billion in revenue and more than 375,000 customers globally. Our Net Promoter Score is one of the ways we measure our success and satisfaction among our customers. And I find it interesting that our Net Promoter Score in healthcare is actually higher than our Net Promoter Score overall, which speaks volumes to the value that we're bringing to the healthcare data center. And we're deployed at scale in premier health systems around the world, and especially in North America. Whatever the size environment you have, Veeam is prepared to protect your information. And as you grow and look to make deeper investments, whether it's Office 365 or cloud consumption, we have solutions to make sure that your applications and data are appropriately protected and can be recovered quickly. And our solution portfolio is complete, designed to meet whatever needs you have today and needs into the future, whatever decisions you make about consumption on premises, different platforms, looking at cloud options, off premises, managed services, what have you. We have a complete offering to ensure that no matter what decisions you make, you can properly protect your applications and data. So ransomware in healthcare is a persistent force. And of course, you know, the fundamentals of ransomware is nefarious organizations working around the world to encrypt your data and lock its use away from you until a ransom is paid and a key delivered. There are obviously numerous risks associated with even attempting to purchase the key and no assurance that that will work. So we need a more comprehensive strategy. And the best defense against ransomware is knowing that we have an immutable copy of our data from which we can recover. And that is the strategy that we're talking about today in partnership with Cloudian. We have the ability to create a write once, read many copy of our data that is rendered immutable by the system itself. Even administrators are not able to make changes. So this is a really important element of a comprehensive ransomware defense strategy. Knowing that you have an immutable copy gives you tremendous confidence in the face of a ransomware attack, knowing that your organization's data is safe and can be recovered. And of course, you know, recently in the midst of this crisis, COVID-19 has given attackers, nefarious organizations around the world, a new vector to increase the click rates of their phishing email that delivers the ransomware payloads. And we're seeing March attacks were up nearly 5-fold with healthcare being the most targeted vertical. and they've been targeting the regions that are most hard hit by this COVID-19 epidemic. And I expect the map from March will show that the focus of efforts has shifted to the Western Hemisphere. And we also see that ransomware is deliberately targeting backups these days. So again, the best defense against ransomware is knowing that you have an immutable copy of your most important data from which you can recover. And by the way, I would like to say personally to all of you joining us today who support hospitals and hospital data centers and support the clinicians working to care for the health and well-being of our communities at large, we are indebted to all of you, and we thank you very much for your service. And now I want to turn this over to Adam to walk us through a little bit of the technology and our partnership with Cloudian.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Berg. I'm Veeam's Global Healthcare Architect, and we're here to talk to you a little bit about the solution that Veeam and Cloudian are partnering on to protect your data from ransomware and other threats that you are encountering today. Now, ransomware protection is a holistic approach. There's no single silver bullet out there. There are multiple avenues that you must use to protect yourself against ransomware, including, integrations around monitoring your data and using the abilities to detect ransomware early as it's in progress, using forensics and restore capabilities and enhanced NAS recovery. But today we're really talking about one of the aspects that Cloudian and Veeam are bringing to market, and that's something that we call Cloud Tier. And we're going to show you how that works and why this is important, why this is a key factor that you must be implementing in your environments to truly protect against ransomware. And so one of the main challenges for protecting your data against ransomware, and we're going to dive into each one of these, is air gapping your data and having immutability of your data. So shortcoming one of most organizations' data protection strategy is they're not air gapping their data. So what is air gapping their data, and what is Veeam and Cloudian doing together to in effect, giving your data a complete air gap from the primary production network environment? So air gapping, of course, is the single most effective technique to be resilient against ransomware. And traditional methods of air gapping, you might be familiar with, concepts like tape backup, right? Completely taking, that's the most traditional method of air gapping that people have been using for years, is backing up your data, putting it on tape, taking those tapes off to Iron Mountain and locking them away, right? Completely air-gapped from the primary network. Ransomware can't attack data if it's sitting in another building completely off the network. But there are other methods that are also considered air-gapping. So qualifying air-gapping, definitions are at least one copy that's offline, not connected to the primary backup infrastructure, or even using a different authentication mechanism and or a different API to access that data is considered an air gap method. Here's a list of common air gapped methodologies that are employed today. And Veeam Cloud Tier certainly qualifies as an air gapping mechanism. And we're going to talk to you today about how it works, why it's considered an air gapping technology, and how you can implement this with Veeam and Cloudian. Other air gapping techniques we've mentioned: tape, of course, but also replicating your virtual machines or replicating your data off to a separate infrastructure, separate network is considered air gapping. Storage snapshots can be part of an air gapping strategy, right? These are instantaneous snapshots on production hardware that can be replicated as well. These are read-only. And other, less used techniques are using rotated media or rotating hard drives to simulate a tape backup environment. Veeam Cloud Tier with Cloudian is by far the most advanced air gapping technology available in the marketplace today, however. So let's go into it. So what does this look like in a Veeam and Cloudian infrastructure? So your primary data resides on some sort of direct attached storage, NAS, or block storage. And with Veeam, we initially ingest that data on something that we call our performance tier of backup storage, and we support any sort of storage here that you might have available to you, whether it's internal drives, NAS storage, block storage, deduplication appliances. We want to land that initial backup on something very high performance, right? This is to make sure that we are not taking a long time to get those initial backups completed. The faster your backups complete, the more often you can take these backups. But we still want to be able to protect this data and air gap this data. So in comes Cloudian and Veeam's cloud tier technology. We offer the ability to move that data, whether it could be an immediate copy or a tier of that copy after a certain time frame, based on a policy approach, a transparent and, of course, space-efficient approach, right to a Cloudian HyperStore object storage with object lock. So this is a completely transparent operation, and we're going to show you a little bit of demo later on in this presentation of how this works and how easy it is to implement this solution. So like I mentioned here, this is a built-in policy redundancy and offsite solution to achieve Veeam's 3-2-1 rule. Now, if you haven't heard of Veeam's 3-2-1 rule, this is a rule that we've developed for data protection that you should seriously be thinking about implementing. And this 3-2-1 rule comes from Veeam's long history of data protection. We have over 350,000 customers globally. And this 3-2-1 rule, really should be satisfied as three copies of your data, 2 different media types, and 1 copy offsite. So, moving data onto a Cloudian object storage device satisfies the 2 and the 1 here, because we're moving data to a second media type, right, onto object storage, and ideally that Cloudian box is offsite, and you can have your data off premises into a different data center. Data becomes immutable, right? And this is one of the biggest challenges is not having your data be immutable. So what is immutable data? And maybe this is a new term, but having your data be immutable means that your data cannot be modified, it cannot be changed, it cannot be encrypted, or it can't even be deleted even by your administrators. So your data is guaranteed to be there, unchangeable, and available for a certain amount of time. And this is very important for protecting against highly targeted malware, but also internal threats and even accidental deletion, right? We can't have our backups accidentally being removed when it's a critical time to be able to recover from that data. So what is S3 Object Lock? So S3 Object Lock is the technology that's implemented within Cloudian HyperStore and taken advantage of by Veeam to guarantee immutable data. This is using that worm model that Jonathan mentioned, the write once, read many model of being able to write that data down and read it as many times as you need to recover from, but that data is completely prevented from being deleted, overwritten for a fixed amount of time, or even indefinitely if your policies require. So how does this work? It's just a quick example here. So like I mentioned earlier, with Veeam, our backups initially land on a high-performance tier, and then we can immediately move that data off to our capacity tier in the Cloudian, where we actually lock the data in place there. So we've got, in this policy example here, we've got a 3-day immutable policy, and this is completely customizable based on your own internal policies of how long you need to make this data immutable for. But as soon as the data is written into our performance tier at a very high rate, we then move that data off to the Cloudian device where it is locked in place for a fixed amount of time. After we have written that 4th copy here and we've set aside our policy, then we can unlock that data and it becomes changeable. And we'll always guarantee that we have 3 days of immutable data residing on our cloud tier device. So very, very simple. So I'll pass it over to Amit to go into details on the Cloudian hardened object storage platform.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you folks for joining today. This was a great introduction by Jonathan and Adam, and I do want to to kind of reflect on what Jonathan said. We really are thankful to all you guys in the healthcare sector for being on the front line of this crisis and keeping us all safe. Today, I'm going to quickly get into a little bit about Cloudian before we get into what the solution we have around ransomware protection, right? So meet Cloudian HyperStore. This is our flagship product, and what this product is an S3 compatible object storage system, which is natively built on the S3 APIs. Now, most of you guys would be aware of the AWS S3 storage system, which is Amazon's version of S3 storage in the public cloud. Cloudian HyperStore is the same or a very similar storage, but it's built for an on-prem deployment. So it will be in your data center, in your control, behind your firewalls, and it services all S3 compatible workloads, anything that has been written for the cloud, and gives you a very, very private cloud of your own. The core capabilities of HyperStore are to store unstructured data. Now, this, for the healthcare sector, it really means data that comes from PACS systems, from scans, from research data, all the EHR data, and even your data from your administrative side, which is your Office 365 data, and so on and so forth. And it is an exabyte scalable system. With Cloudian, customers can start as small as 3 nodes and scale up to hundreds of petabytes. The system supports all the major public cloud and is it's a perfect hybrid cloud solution where you can start with the data landing in your data center on Cloudian and peer it at the back end to any of the public clouds that you have. Here I've listed some of our select healthcare customers. Needless to say, we are deployed in some of the biggest healthcare organizations around the world, and the whole idea of using Cloudian in healthcare is to be able to scale your data storage needs while keeping your cost to almost what it would be from a cloud perspective, and even lesser in that sense. The deployment options for Cloudian range from an appliance which Cloudian supplies to our customers, but at the core, Cloudian HyperStore is a software-defined storage, and it works on any x86-based servers that you may already have in your deployment. We are also partnered with the likes of Lenovo, HPE, and Cisco on the hardware side. And then finally, we do have a metered by the use option that allows you to use Cloudian in an as-a-service model. Why do customers choose Cloudian? It is purpose-built for capacity. From a healthcare perspective, any kind of unstructured data, whether it's a PACS system, scans, and all the other kind of administrative data can be stored on Cloudian, and most of our healthcare customers are using us for that. Scalability is a big selling factor, with the cost being as low as ½ cent per gig. That is one of the big selling factors. It is a geo-distributed system. By that I mean the deployment can start from a single site and span multiple sites, hospitals, locations, and what have you, and even regions, while presenting a single system to the user and administrator to ensure availability of data from the most appropriate location. And finally, cloud integration is something that most of the healthcare organizations are looking at, but a pure public cloud approach is not something that the healthcare organizations can afford with a lot of the data being PII and what have you. So from a hybrid cloud perspective, it is something that most of our customers are deploying Cloudian in. To get to the topic at hand, let's get into Cloudian HyperStore support of S3 Object Lock. So we've been working on S3 Object Lock from the day that it got released with AWS S3, and this was about, I want to say 12 months back. What S3 object lock is a way of doing worm for S3 object storage systems. This is the standardized way based on, it's the de facto standard, I want to say, that most of the S3 storages will follow at some point or the other. This is the way you would do write once and read many in your object storage system. With S3 object locks, the objects written within the buckets in an object storage system can get locked at the granularity of the object. So you could have a bucket which has multiple objects, and you could select to lock only a few of these and keep the others unlocked, thereby protecting the data that needs protection while keeping the data that you can move around or get rid of or to make space in your storage system at that granularity. The retention management controls that come with object lock allow you to define how much period those objects will be locked for. In some cases, you may want your objects to be locked for a very small period of time where you're experimenting with certain things. And in other cases, you could have compliance reasons to lock your objects, specifically some customer information, patient information, for years together. This can be all defined at the granularity of the object while the creation at the creation time itself, right? In Cloudian, we support two different modes of S3 object lock. So there's the governance mode, and this is intended for data protection, but it is a less restrictive mode of data protection. Objects are locked for a certain period, just as you would in any mode. However, in governance mode, you will still have privileges for certain users or certain privileged users that will have access to delete these worm-protected objects. Now think of these as your administrators giving different departments within the office or the different departments in the hospital access to the storage systems and trying to keep a distance between the departments so that one department does not inadvertently delete or modify data that's being written by a different department. This is definitely the less stringent mode and is not the recommended mode for a ransomware protection use case. The compliance mode, this is what is supported in the Veeam-Cloudian solution. Now, Veeam creates the backup workflow with an object locked parameters set directly from the workflow, and those parameters are set in the compliance mode. Cloudian supports the compliance mode also, definitely the most stringent mode. The reason why it's stringent is it does protect your data from deletion or modification for a certain period of time, just like governance mode. But in this mode, you will not be able to give any user any privileges to modify or delete the data, not even if they have root access. So when Veeam connects to Cloudian, it is considered super user. But even from Veeam, if a backup has been put into Cloudian in compliance mode, any delete that is executed from Veeam will not be able to delete the data that's been in Cloudian. Because this is such a stringent mode, and once administrators put data in Cloudian in compliance mode, it cannot be deleted for the time period. We require a special license to put data in worm mode and compliance mode within Cloudian, just so that you are aware that this is something that is going to be locking up your data for a certain amount of time, and not even your privileged users can delete it. In addition, it's not enough to have a feature like object lock and say that your systems are completely secure from hackers and they're an airtight system, as Adam was talking about. What happens in the scenario when you have hackers, that you have the sophisticated hackers that get in and compromise your system at the operating system level? Well, they get access to the storage software, and they could potentially even get into root access and delete the storage system from the operating level. Well, we have specific guidelines from the various government agencies to specify what actually conforms to Veeam on what can be called Veeam-enabled storage. Specifically, the Security and Exchange Commission Rule 17A4 talks about what can be called as Veeam storage. It specifies that even a root access will not be able to delete your storage system at that level if it is to be designated Veeam. Well, Cloudian spent about 12 to 18 months getting certified in various government, U.S. government related certifications on security and Veeam. This includes SEC rules, FINRA rules, CFTC rules, which talk about what is required from a Veeam, not only from a feature perspective, but also from a processing and coding and testing perspective of those systems. And we are proud to say that we are one of the first object storage system on-prem to be certified by Co-Asset Associates in these regulations. We are also working on EMEA-related regulations that are very similar, and in some cases even more stringent. When shipped in Veeam mode, root access in Cloudian is deleted, as well as you will get things like Secure Shell pre-integrated. You have integrated firewalls and IAM are back controls, access controls to make sure that your systems are airtight. So how does the whole workflow work between Cloudian and Veeam? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You start backing up your data just like you would in any regular backup workflow. Veeam creates the scale-out backup repository, and to make it an airtight workflow, you would use the newly released copy mode in Veeam. The data lands on the performance tier and is immediately copied over to Cloudian. While you're doing the setup, you would also specify that this workflow within Veeam is an object lock workflow, and you also get a dialog box, which Adam will actually walk you guys through, where you specify the time frame for which that bucket is locked. These parameters are automatically inherited within Cloudian, and a locked bucket with locked objects is created within Cloudian for the time duration that has been specified. Because it's a copy mode, as the data is copied over for backup, it immediately is a second copy is also made onto the scale-out backup repository, so that all of your data is protected within the locked buckets inside Cloudian. Now, if you are even attacked by any malware or ransomware, this data cannot be modified. It is really immutable from that perspective, and you can always get a clean copy for restore from the locked buckets within Cloudian at that level. With that, I'm going to transfer it over to Adam again for a demo that can show you this whole process in action. Adam, on to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Amit. That was a great background into Cloudian. And what I want to, if you thought that was complicated, it really isn't. I want to show you guys a demo of how you enable this functionality with Veeam and Cloudian, and how simple it is to add immutability to your data with our joint solution. So let's dive right into our demo. So what we're looking at right here is the Cloudian interface, nice, beautiful HTML5 interface, and the only thing that we really need to collect in here is our S3 endpoint. This is an HTTPS endpoint, so HTTPS does secure the traffic between Veeam and Cloudian. So it's fully encrypted over the wire using SSL. So let's go ahead and just copy that interface. So that's the information that we need for Veeam. And here we're over in the Veeam backup and replication interface, and what we're going to do is add a new S3 object storage repository to Veeam. So as we see here, we're just going to give this a name. This will be our Cloudian S3 immutable repository. This is where I paste in the HTTPS endpoint. Select your secure credentials. If you need to use a gateway server to access, you can click that and use that here. We'll confirm our SSL security certificate. Now this is how easy it is to enable immutability. You can see here at the checkbox, and you put in the number of days you want to make your data immutable in Cloudian. How easy is this? So let's just make it immutable for a day here. Inside our bucket, you can create a new folder or select an existing folder in here. I'll select an existing folder inside this bucket. That's where our data is going to land. Click OK, click Next, and we're saving those configurations into Veeam. And you can see here in our summary that recent backups will be immutable for 1 day. There's just one more step here, and now it's adding the bucket that we just added to a scale-up backup repository. Scale-up backup repository is Veeam's technology for combining various different storage types into a single logical repository for your backup. So we're going to create a new scale-out backup repository. This is where we select our high-speed performance tier of storage, and we also then select our S3 storage as well, and we call that a scale-out backup repository. All right, so we're selecting our initial repository, and now we're going to extend this to our Cloudian S3 immutable bucket. And this is where we can enable some additional capabilities like copy backups directly to the object storage as soon as they're created. We also have policies like move older backups there. Right, so we've got multiple different policies that you can enable and how often we move data to the Cloudian immutable S3 object bucket. Just simple policy-based checkboxes here. Very easy to do. Click Apply. And we've got a brand new repository that we will use for landing our backups in. And that's it for creating the repository. Now, when you create a traditional backup job, when you select the source of your data, you just select this new Cloudian immutable scale-up backup repository in Veeam, and you are set. It is literally this easy to enable this capability. And that's it. That's our entire demo. So we want to make these very powerful features consumable in such an easy way that it doesn't take any sort of training classes to enable this capability. You guys are all now experts in enabling immutable data with Veeam and Cloudian.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I'm going to run right into our questions then. Our first question is, does data reside on the HyperStore and or Cloudian storage like S3?
Well, that would be me, right? So Cloudian is an on-prem data storage system. So the way you would deploy Cloudian is you would either get the software-defined storage license from Cloudian and deploy it on a storage device of your choice within your data center. So this is going to be a physical storage system in your data center, and the backup that you do to Cloudian will reside inside your data center on an appliance that comes from Cloudian or an appliance that you have running the Cloudian software. Now, we do also have service providers that offer this as a service, so you could get Cloudian storage as a service from some of the MSPs and do it that way, as well as we are partnered with VMware, so you could get one of the VMware cloud service providers to give you a Cloudian storage where you could back up your system. And then the third part of the answer is Cloudian HyperStore does support the hybrid cloud operations, so you could have multi-sites having Cloudian devices, whether it's physical or a software storage in your data center. And then you could, at the back end, either copy or tier the data to any public cloud of your choice for use cases like disaster recovery and or tiering, where you could have data within your data center for, let's say, for the first 12 months, and then any older data, you could tier it out to something like Glacier or even a lower tier storage that you have of your choice. So all of these deployments are possible, but very clearly it's an on-prem storage system, so the data would reside on Cloudian within your data center.
Thanks so much for that, Amit. Running right into our next question, how would I gather pricing for these products?
Sure. So you can talk to us directly at Veeam about Veeam pricing. We have a variety of ways that our solution can be priced, both on the virtual infrastructure socket level or for individual virtual machines and or physical machines. And then as far as the Cloudian side of things, Amit?
You can reach out to us at the email that has been listed here. I can direct you to the right people to get the pricing. Typically, you would interface with the Cloudian representative in your area, and there are some good, exciting offers going on. So I will get you in touch with the right people to get the right quotations.
Great. Okay, I'll run into our next question. Does each site host a Cloudian HyperStore device?
We are a distributed storage system, so you could deploy us in multi-sites. Now, each of these sites could have a physical box, and there are multiple configurations here, right? You could have a replicated Cloudian in there with a replication factor of 3 or what have you. Then the storage is distributed across your sites to make sure you have the maximum amount of data protection coming in. But you could also have erasure coding set up with 4+2 or 12+5 configuration. So it really depends on how you have your system architected. You would have various different nodes distributed across various different sites, even regions for that matter. And it does not have to be all physical Cloudian devices. You could have Cloudian on Cloudian appliances. You could have Cloudian on Lenovo appliances, and so on and so forth, distributed across your sites in different configurations.
Great. Okay, running into our next question. Do you partner with VMware?
I'm not sure if that's just for Veeam, but of course I'll answer from the Veeam side. So of course Veeam is a major alliance partner of VMware's. Of course we boast the best VMware integration of any data protection partner in the industry. So of course there's a very large partnership there. So in a minute I'll pass the same question over to you.
Absolutely. From a Cloudian perspective, we are strategically aligned with VMware. VMware resells Cloudian through the VCD program. So the object storage that you would be purchasing from VMware in the VCD tranche is Cloudian today. And we are part of the VCPP package. We are also working with VMware on other aspects of their program. So yes, absolutely, we partner with them very, very closely.
Okay, great. Running into our next question, what is done to ensure HIPAA compliance?
So this is Jonathan. I'll take this one on the Veeam side of things. HIPAA is an interesting set of regulations for technology and healthcare, particularly for backup, because it doesn't actually say much about data protection. But it says only that we have to have backups and that we have to be able to recover and that we should test. So complying with HIPAA to the letter will likely leave us short of our true objective, which is to assure our organizations that we can recover come what may. But to the end that HIPAA does have an impact on the architectures that we deploy, of course, Veeam leverages data at flight and data at rest encryption as a matter of course. Right. So all of those things can be done with the product as it is. But I think building out a truly comprehensive strategy requires evaluating adjacencies like Cloudian's S3 Object Lock to create a more comprehensive solution. Amit, do you have anything to add to that?
Pretty much the same, right? We completely agree. HIPAA is a process. It's not a feature. To to get to HIPAA readiness from a Cloudian perspective, we have features like AES 256 server-side encryption for data stored at rest, SSL connectivity, HTTPS connection specifically with Veeam. The data in flight is completely encrypted. We offer the secure shell. We have role-based access controls as well as audit trail logging to get to HIPAA readiness, but it really depends on your implementation to get to the HIPAA compliance. And again, it's really a process. From a Veeam-Cloudian perspective, the solution is HIPAA ready. It really needs to be deployed in that sense.
Great, thanks, Amit. I'll go into our next question. What else should hospitals do to reduce ransomware impact?
Certainly. So I'll start with this one. So, like I said earlier in the deck, a comprehensive ransomware mitigation strategy needs to be in effect across the entire organization. So there isn't necessarily a single technology that you can go out and just purchase and say, I'm protected against ransomware. It's a full employee training strategy needs to be in effect. You need to have monitoring and analytics tools around your data to quickly identify when a ransomware attack is underway so you can quickly mitigate against it. You need to protect your data with an air-gapped or immutable solution like using Veeam and Cloudian. But you also need to have technologies that can check your data when you restore it for things like zero-day viruses and malware. So you could certainly be easily putting malware into your backup files that was not discoverable by any current malware or antivirus protection solutions that might be in place in your environment today. So Veeam has a secure restore capability as part of our feature set, which allows us to protect or segment that restore off into a network segmentation that we can then scan that data for any viruses or malware prior to it being restored back into your production environment. So we call that secure restore. And we integrate with all the major antivirus and malware detection scan engines for that capability. So there's a multi-prong approach that your organization needs to implement for a true ransomware data protection strategy.
Going into our next question, how does a Cloudian scale?
Very well. Cloudian is a distributed, scalable object storage system. It is built for scalability. We start as low as a 3-node cluster in the 100 terabyte range and scale up to petabytes. So the largest cluster we have in production today is actually on the M&E side, similar workload to what you would have on healthcare, but we are running a 250 petabyte cluster in that. The scalability is completely granular. You can scale, it's a scale out system, and you can scale by adding one node at a time and scale as granularly as required and as fast as you can. Now, interestingly, we do have some of the densest appliances with our partners from Seagate, where you can get a Cloudian appliance, Cloudian Seagate appliance called HyperStore Extreme, which comes with 1.5 petabytes in a 4U box. So if you want to scale out with that from a dense perspective, you can scale with 2 nodes of that and get 3 petabytes. Or you can take our 15XX appliance and scale with 50 terabytes at a time and get to that level. So there's a lot of options for our customers and a lot of modularity and granularity built into how Cloudian can scale.
Okay, great. I have another question for Cloudian, I believe. Does Cloudian use its own internal disk, or can we use our own SAN storage?
Cloudian works on disks. It's a disk-based system, so we do work on this. It could be a disk-based system, and as I mentioned initially, right, it can work with any x86-based appliance. or we offer our own appliances to customers.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have from the audience today. So that concludes our webinar, Curing the Threat of Ransomware with Veeam and Cloudian. If you guys do have any additional questions, you can reach out to Veeam at info@veeam.com and Cloudian at info@cloudian.com, and we'll be happy to address these. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day, everyone.